Chapter 134. Southern Base Conference 3. Bai Angguo turned to look at Mu Ziking viciously. You pulled out all the people I planted in the base. How did you know? Wei Ran snorted coldly. Bai Lao, are you talking about your people? Or the people you put in the Juzhong base, when the high? Other three old chiefs heard people from the Juzhong base. Their hearts skipped a beat. And they turned to look at Bai and Iwo and asked urgently, Bai Lao, what's going on? This is no joke. The South Border Base and the Jichong Base have always been at odds with each other, and recently they have even reached a point where they are on the verge of breaking out. If Bai Angguo really let people from Juzhong Base in, it would have become a crime of colluding with outsiders. With a sullen face, Bai Angguo glanced at the three of them. In order to achieve the goal, there is nothing that can't be done, these are only temporary. The three people became angry. Old Bai. You are confused. Suddenly, the shouting downstairs gradually became clear. But then came another cry for help. Help, what is this? Come and tear me out, and cut these off. The conference room was on the 6th floor, so the calls from downstairs could be heard clearly by the people in the conference room. The guard felt that something was wrong and went to the window to check again. The shock at this sight covered his face, and he let out a cry of shock. Chief, those plants can move. Move. Our people are all entangled by the plants downstairs, and some people have also been taken down by another wave of people. How is it possible? Bai Angguo's face was gloomy. As if he didn't believe the guard's words, he walked quickly to the window to have a look. Mu Ziking knew that there was a plant-controlled supernatural being next to him, and Bai Zinji saw it with his own eyes when he came back with him. He wasn't surprised by this, so he prepared a large number of people in this area. No matter how powerful the plant department is, it is impossible to entangle everyone. What he didn't believe was that there should be quite a few other people avoiding the plant department, and they would be stopped by another wave of people. But when Bai Angguo walked to the windowsill and saw the scene in front of him with his own eyes, he completely believed it. His fingers gripped the windowsill so hard that his fingers turned white. But the situation was exactly as the guard said. His people were all under control, and the black crowd squatting down and raising their hands was indeed his own. As for who the group of people holding weapons was, there was no need to confirm at this time. He turned around and stared at Mu Ziking, who was sitting calmly and gracefully with his legs crossed. His eyes were full of cruelty. He pointed at Mu Ziking with trembling fingers and said, "Kill him." Bang! The door of the conference room was kicked open. The three old chiefs were already panicked by what Bai Angguo said, and now they were so frightened by a wave of unknown people knocking open the door that their blood pressure almost went up. Only Mu Ziking and his party were the most calm, because it was Gao Ding who kicked the door open. He rushed into the conference room with dozens of people behind him and quickly controlled Bai Angguo's people without any special power. Gao Ding. Bai Angguo couldn't believe it. Ha ha ha, Mr. Bai, I'm so sorry I was Mr. Cheng's person before I entered the base. Gao Ding's rough arrogance resounded in the conference room. This person was newly recruited by him to work when he first came to the base, and he was a relatively capable person. Although he hadn't reached the core, he was also mixed up in the upper middle class in a short time. Unexpectedly, it was Mu Ziking's deliberate arrangement early in the morning. Bai Angguo's face was gloomy, his hands clenched into fists. Mu Ziking, don't be too complacent. This is not over, I can continue to fight with you. Mu Ziking's face was cold, with a bit of cruelty on the corner of his mouth. Old Bai, let me show you something. Behind Zhang Yanfeng took a small device and placed it on the desktop, then pressed the button on it. A virtual screen flashed in the air, and pressed a few times on the extended keyboard. The virtual screen shows the desert outside the southern base. The people who were ambushing there had already been flying all over the body, and the blood was all cleaned up, leaving only some smoke from the roaring artillery fire. Mu Ziking's eyes were covered with a layer of frost, and he said slowly, "You think that I will not attack if I am mixed with ordinary people, but you are wrong. Muziking, have never used the word soft-hearted. The few people you arranged to open the gate of the base to let these people in were dealt with on the spot. Guming and Suyi had already inquired about the ordinary people there. They were all from the Juzhong base, and they were all those who came here voluntarily, knowing the purpose of this time. That being the case, as they wished, they died on the battlefield. Followed by Muziking's ice-cold words, Bai Angguo, who was once high-spirited, was completely defeated. Your every move, every word and deed has always been under my control. I know exactly how many people you let in from the 9th layer base, where you put them, and where you put them. I haven't moved, not because I'm afraid of you, but because I'm afraid that if I move, you won't be able to continue playing, but if you don't try your best to play, I won't have fun. Bai Angguo's face quickly faded. With a pale face, his body limp and slumped on a chair, unable to speak a word, and then lost consciousness. This scene made the hearts of the 3 old chiefs tremble. Isn't this just playing tricks on Bai Angguo like a guinea pig? The depth of Muziking's city is really terrifying. Even Bai Angguo, an old fox, is played around by him. In fact, the 3 of them had never had any experience in these battles, and they were all from civilian ranks, so after Bai Angguo collapsed, they had no backbone. At this time, he saw Muziking's sharp fingers tapping on the table, as if he was also beating to warn the 3 chiefs. Chief Zhao settled down. This kind of ending is already like this, and there is no possibility of turning around, so I can only ask you ... What do you want? Muziking's eyes were slightly cold, and he said slowly, I said, I am not Sheng Guanling. He was willing to bring you here to escape. It was his benevolence to you, but to me you are nothing in the base. Your welfare in the southern base remains the same. You don't need to pay land lease, and you will be given monthly your corresponding supplies. But I want to take back your rights, including your soldiers. The faces of the 3 chiefs turned pale. This is equivalent to becoming an ordinary person in disguise with no power and no possibility of causing trouble. Chief Zhao and the others were of course unwilling, but they didn't dare to be tough, so they could only ask tentatively, what if we don't want to? Muziking opened his cold eyes and said coldly, you can take your soldiers and leave the southern border. Chief Zhao blushed furiously, but looked at Bai Angguo, who had passed out next to him, and still dared not speak out in anger. They have no strength and no way to fight. In the end, he could only grit his teeth and nod in agreement. After all, they would not survive long without the southern border. Chapter 135. Her man, Chen Wang, and the 3 old chiefs thought they were fully prepared and pushed Bai Angguo to the top position, just because he promised that the 3 of them would be allowed to enter the management core of the base and share the power. But none of them thought that today would evolve into such a situation, and in the end they couldn't even keep their own troops. Only 4 words crushing defeat. When these old men came out carrying the paralyzed Bai Angguo, they discovered that the office building of the southern border base had been surrounded by a large number of supernatural beings belonging to Muziking. On the ground in the hall on the 1st floor, there were large spreads of dark blood, and there were several corpses on the ground covered with white cloth, and someone was cleaning them up. This scene made them feel terrified. It seems that Muziking has always been just the few people who come and go around him, but in fact, he has already expanded his sphere of influence in private. Yehi Island. Because the office is being refurbished, Muziking stayed in Yehi Island temporarily for the past few days. Muziking and Gu Ming were talking in the study. Su Yi handed the list file compiled in his hand to Muziking, and said, Bai Angguo suffered a slight stroke, and is half paralyzed and can only lie in bed now. All the people below have been detained. Let these people go to cultivate the land first, sharpen their minds, and then redistribute the document is a list full of hundreds of pages. When Jiang Nanfeng saw so many people, his eyes suddenly lit up. With a hippie smiling face, he gently pushed Su Yi with his arm. Afterwards, arranged some people to work in my manufacturing industry as coolies. In the early stage of mechanical design, manufacturing and automation, manual installation, and work are required. Su Yi gestured, okay. Kang had already designated an area to rebuild the industrial park before, and asked Wei Ran to release some of the manufacturing machinery he had received a few days ago. Wei Ran stood behind King and looked at the list. These old men are quite self-respecting. The cold King put down the list file and tapped the paper with his slender fingers. Su Yi, pay attention to some old men who have been around for a long time and don't use them for a long time. You can figure it out yourself. Su Yi nodded and said, okay, I know. It's not that King is intolerant, but, after all, there are a few people who are loyal to Bai Angguo. Before the heart belongs, you have to work hard to grind it. Just after they took over their power, some people were suddenly pulled down from the top, saying that no one would believe them if they had no dissent. At this moment, Chen Wei opened the door and walked in, holding a satellite phone in his hand. Brother Cheng, Colonel Shangguan's call. Muzi took it and got up and walked to the windowsill to answer it. Okay. Wei Ran stared obsessively at King, who had a cold and slender back, listening to the phone, occasionally nodding his head and answering concisely. Her man finally became the king of the southern border base. The people in the base, including Bai Angguo, thought that Shangguanling would definitely rush back before the base meeting. That's why Bai Angguo arranged for people to sneak into Shangguanling's team in an attempt to create chaos and attack Shangguanling to prevent him from returning. But none of them expected that Shangguanling didn't show up in the end and didn't say a word for King at the base meeting, all because King made Shangguanling do this. Of course, Shangguanling asked in doubt at first. After all, wouldn't it be better for him to support King's position? But what King said next made Shangguanling feel for the first time that his management, which was based on people's guesses, was far inferior to the thoughtful King. Although you are all people who follow you wholeheartedly, no matter how you say it, Bai Angguo was a hero who conquered the country in Huaguo. If you come back to fight him with me, the people under you will more or less feel cold-hearted. I've made plans since I wanted to be the leader of the southern border base, and you, Shangguanling, have never supported me in these plans. That is, Changya never thought of using Shangguanling to get the position of leader. King doesn't need this kind of support either. It all depends on whether he wants it or not. Ran. King's deep and pleasant voice brought Wei Ran back to his senses. There was no one else in the office. Isham ... brother. What? King caressed her and said, what's wrong? I've been wandering in a daze, are you tired? Wei Ran smiled and shook her head. I just feel emotional. It seems that we just came from this time last year. After Beijing came out, this society has completely settled down in the southern border. King pinned her fallen hairpin behind her ear with a little tenderness. Do you miss Beijing's home? I'll take you back to see it. For the current King, going anywhere is just a blink of an eye. Although Wei Ran would occasionally think of the Beijing villa in the middle of the night, it was just the old days. She buried her head in King's broad chest and still shook her head, with a muffled, clear voice. I just think of the days when we were a family of 4. Uncles, aunts, King and her. King smiled lowly, and then hugged her tightly. He whispered next to her ear, a family of 4, and there will be more in the future. Wei Ran instantly understood what he meant. Boom. His face suddenly turned red. Brother. What he said to you doesn't mean the same thing. King pinched her chin, teasing her with a smile on the corner of his mouth. What kind of meaning does it mean? Don't want to be with me, or don't want to give birth to me? Oh, brother. Wei Ran was so ashamed by his blunt words that she wanted to hide in a hole. I hate it. I don't want to talk to you anymore. Just as she was about to turn around and leave, King grabbed her slender wrist and pushed her into his chest again with a little force. Then his warm palm slammed her buttocks, hold her up, and let her legs wrap around his waist. A deep voice sounded. Where do you want to go? Ha. Wei Ran couldn't bear to bite her small earlobe and whispered. It seemed that even the air became thinner in an instant. He then carried her in his arms and walked towards the nearest windowsill, then put her lightly on the windowsill where the sunlight slanted in. Musicang's slightly cool thin lips lingered on her ears and neck, while his rough fingers moved down her delicate neck. She trembled slightly in his arms. Just because of his sentence. I think. It's good to keep 1 or 2 windowsills. The golden sun shone on her flushed cheeks. It looks good in an instant. The clothes on the upper body are intact. If someone looks inside through the transparent glass outside, they will only see Musicang hugging her behind Wei Ran, and the two of them are only talking in secret. If you can hear it, you will suddenly understand. It's all ambiguous between dirty beds. Chapter 136. There are tens of millions of people in the ninefold base in a dim room. Didn't you say that you would not give in to me even if you died? What? It's only been a few days and it's turned into this look of refusal and welcome. Chung Shuxian said insulting and contemptuous words, and still held a video camera in his hand to record. No. Bai Xinzi wanted to cover her face with her hands, but was held down by Chung Shuxian. After she was sent here by her father, she refused to die for a while. Although she gritted her teeth and endured it, how could she resist Chung Shuxian, a veteran in love? After a game is over. Without any tenderness, Chung Shuxian got up and put on his pants slowly. Bai Xinzi, who had regained some consciousness, stimulated him and said, "You can only nest in the Jutong base and play with women, and you will never see the light of day. My father is blind to think you have strength." Chang Shuxian's face was cold. Bai Tu-sin glanced at her. Suddenly, laughed out loud. "Did I not tell you that Bai Anguo failed to counterattack 2 days ago, and the outcome is unknown? Now the southern border base is completely controlled by Musicang." Chang Shuxian had finished dressing up, coldly said, "Bai Anguo is a waste. I can let you stay in my bed for a few days. It is your last honor." "Come in," he shouted towards the door. The door of the room was pushed open immediately, and 4 tall and strong men came in, and these were Chang Shuxian's 4 personal guards. Ah! Bai Xinzi, who was naked on the bed, was so frightened that her face turned pale, and she quickly wrapped her body tightly with the quilt. The 4 men walked in front of Chang Shuxian and called respectfully the leader. Chang Shuxian nodded, pointed to Bai Xinzi, who was getting off the bed, and said lightly, "That woman rewarded you. Enjoy it and keep it clean. I'm the only man." Bai Xinzi went crazy when he heard Chang Shuxian's words, shouting, "Chang Shuxian, how could you treat me like this? I'm here to marry you, not a prostitute. You can't do this." The men looked at each other and didn't dare to take any action for a moment. They didn't expect such a good thing to happen. Fell on his head. Although Bai Xinzi is the most beautiful among Chang Shuxian's many women, every time they see Bai Xinzi, they will take a few more private glances. Chang Shuxian said with a gloomy face, as if a little impatiently, "Hurry up." The 4 men guessed that Bai Xinzi probably annoyed Chang Shuxian, and that's why they ended up like this. They were afraid that Chang Shuxian would anger them, so these men walked towards Bai Xinzi. "Wait, Chang Shuxian stopped him again. The men looked at him blankly again, only to see him smile grimly, use some help, make her more obedient. They held down Bai Xinzi, who was crazily cursing and struggling, and it didn't take long before the obedience gradually disappeared. Chang Shuxian sat on the sofa and looked at the chaos on the opposite side, but it seemed to make him even more excited. But it was all because of the support. Because it was for Wei, Ran prepared it. Chang Shuxian walked out of the room, but the absurdity inside was still going on. He returned to the study, where the golden dragon was waiting for him. Boss, Ji Firong has succeeded, because her physical signs will continue to change in the future, so these 2 days will remove her from the laboratory and transport her to a new large den. Chang Shuxian paused, turned to look at the golden dragon. "She will stay here if she is not transported out of the base, and put her in the last mountain, where there is a large deserted cave." Golden Dragon said blankly, "But there are no aliens in the base, so we can't do the most actual spawning data. It's only for the time being, and there will be more soon." The temporary and soon Golden Dragon always felt that they didn't mean it literally. There are only a few aliens here in the laboratory, and they have already been dissected to a bad shape, but he didn't dare to ask more questions, fearing that he would be a member of the army of aliens in the next second. The Golden Dragon changed to the next topic and continued. Winter is coming in 1 month, and the aliens will gradually reduce their outings from now on, and winter is when the people in the base are active. Should we move the cave outside to a more secluded place? Winter is coming, Cheng Shuxian asked without answering. Do we have a new batch of aliens coming out? Cheng Shuxian said, Golden Dragon remembered several batches of supernatural powers that inject large amounts of egg fluid every day are in the laboratory. Cheng Shuxian was talking about one of them. Jinlong replied, yes, there is a batch of data that is very good and can be released in advance. Cheng Shuxian's eyes flashed sinister. Didn't Mu Zikang become the leader of the southern border base? Let's go to congratulate him. Southern border base. 3 days after the base meeting ended, an announcement announced to everyone that the leader of the southern border base had been replaced by Mu Zikang. Zikang is fully responsible and independently owned, while Sheng Wanling is the general of the southern border. That is to say, from now on, only Mu Zikang will be in charge of the southern border base, and the southern border base will be Mu Zikang's personal property from now on. This is also the condition that Mu Zikang put forward when Sheng Wanling asked Mu Zikang to take over the southern border base. He will never make a dowry for others, let alone engage in the big pot meal. If he wanted it, he had to be in full control of it. Sheng Wanling had no objection to this, he just asked for one point. It is to ensure that the supplies can keep up when going out to fight, and there is nothing else. Wei Ran still admires Sheng Wanling's awe-inspiring righteousness. He is dedicated to the well-being of the people under him, and even gives up the rights he has already obtained. She really couldn't do it. If the southern border base wasn't owned by Mu Zikang and the others, she wouldn't have spent 3 full months cleaning up all the polluted land in the base. She even thought that if Sheng Wanling regretted it in the end, then she would use the same skills to restore the southern border base to a polluted state again. Anyway, she was never a good person. The base has been very lively these past few days, because Mu Zikang made several announcements one after another, which also announced that the southern border base has officially embarked on a state of self-sufficiency. According to the data released by the Institute of Biology, the land has completely recovered and can be replanted with crops. The manufacturing industry began to recruit a large number of people, filling up the vacancies for a while. In addition, those who have reached a certain level of supernatural powers who were excluded due to internal fighting before can be interviewed. After they succeed, they can officially join the formation, which belongs exclusively to Mu Zikang. All of a sudden the crowd cheered. Long live Mr. Cheng. Long live Mr. A. Why do they all call brother Mr.? Cheng Wei Ran wondered when she heard these excited and loud voices. Because before they had exhausted their brains and couldn't think of what to call them, so they didn't have a name until now. Jiang Nanfeng laughed a few times. During the base meeting before, Gao Ding called brother Cheng Mr. Cheng, and somehow this title spread, and now everyone respects him by this title. Because Gao Ding is older than Mu Zikang, it is not easy to call him brother. Later he changed brother to general on a whim. Wei Ran smiled and said, it's pretty good, the leader of 10,000 people, the total of tens of millions of people. Chapter 137. Occasional leisure and elegance. Since the news that the southern border base can be planted spread outside, a large number of newcomers have poured in for a while. Most of them are relatively high-level supernatural beings. In the past, because of the remote and difficult conditions, the population of the southern road was still relatively small. This is because the development will be relatively slow in the future, because agriculture and industry need talents in all aspects. The current demand has not yet reached the ideal population that Mu Zikang expected, but it is still within his expectations. Because the development industry has just begun, there is no need to worry. The 15th floor is being renovated, so Mu Zikang temporarily stays at Yehi Island to work. Gu Ming, Su Yi, the newly recruited formation should not stay with the people in the county, they must be picked out and they must be trained strictly. Gu Ming and Su Yi understood Mu Ziking's meaning very well and immediately nodded in response down. Because it belongs to his own guard, so he must first cultivate his loyalty and separate food and housing to avoid mixing other emotions. Gu Ming was silent for a while and said some of the people who have come here these days are from the 9 layers base. According to them, the 9 layers base has become rather strange now. Not only many supernatural beings have disappeared inexplicably, but even ordinary people. He paused for a moment. With a serious face, they said that Chang Shuxian was under martial law in the last Barren Hill and built a research institute. Su Yui also agreed, that's right. These people came with their families. I've come here, and I've already tested it with a lie detector, and it's very reliable. This lie detector was specially made by Gu Ming for people with supernatural powers. No matter how high a person's level is, as long as this machine is used, they will be nothing to hide. Wei Ran frowned slightly, and a thought flashed across her face. Couldn't he have moved the alien lair back to his own base? As soon as she said this, everyone fell silent. This is not going to be easy. Now the Jichong base is completely sealed by Chang Shuxian. Mu Ziking could go in, but it was like an unknown place, like a maze. It was useless to go in alone. Because the ability could not detect the number, it was like 2 hands could not reach 4 enemies. A few thousand is easy to solve, if it is tens of thousands. Wei Ran looked at Mu Ziking beside him and said, "Brother, haven't you been able to find out about the news from the Jichong base?" Base. But if I'm right, he didn't move the lair back to Jichong, but the lair was already in his base from the beginning. It is to consume our combat power and weapons, and to delay the growth of his mutant army of supernatural beings. Jiang Nanfeng took a deep breath and said quite seriously, when did Chang Shuxian have such a brain? Could it be that while the egg mutated him, it also opened up his 2 channels of Ren and Du? Gu Ming touched him with a smile on his lips. Short hair. And Chen Wei and the others gave him a big blank look, as if saying, "Idiot." The extremely brief internal strife returned to the discussion mode in an instant, and Chen Wei then asked, "Then, can we just watch?" Junyi said coldly. Mu Ziking turned his dark and cold eyes to look at the blue sky and white clouds outside the floor-to-ceiling windows. Bitter and harsh. If he spends his whole life in the Jichong base, then I will follow him. But as long as he steps out, there is nothing to hide. A while ago, these elders, we are all so busy that we live under the same roof and we can't see each other every day. Wei Ran and Mu Ziking were no different than usual, because even if Wei Ran didn't work with Mu Ziking, they still slept in the same bed at night. After dinner in the evening, it was rare for everyone to sit leisurely in the living room, eating fruit and playing mahjong. This time they are not paper mahjong. It was Gu Ming and Jiang Nanfeng who once went out on a mission and found an electric automatic mahjong table in a certain building. This Jiang Nanfeng was very happy. After the task was completed, he hurriedly took Su Yi to carry the 200 caddy mahjong table back. No, tonight these 4 masters played mahjong again. Mu Ziking went to the kitchen to squeeze coconut milk chia juice for Wei Ran. Wei Ran fed Xiao Bai, who was squatting next to her, a few red fruits and some food for maintaining the lion's fur. She noticed that Jiang Nanfeng's hands were very delicate, so she joked, "Nanfeng, the little puppet in your hand is very pretty, let me play with it." Jiang Nanfeng didn't speak, but Chen Wei spoke before him. Xiao Ran, "Don't count on it, I just touched his little puppet that day, and he chased me for several blocks." Jiang Nanfeng listened when Chen Wei said this. He got annoyed and raised the puppet in his hand. "Did you touch it? Did you touch it? Why did I chase you? You dropped my puppet. Did you accidentally hold it steady? Do you know if you can't hold it steady? Get lost." Seeing Jiang Nanfeng guarding the puppet tightly, Wei Ran couldn't help pursing her lips. "Is this Gu Ming sending you?" Wei Ran punctured it all at once, and her face became a little uncomfortable. She glanced at Gu Ming, who was indifferent and wanted to deny it, but was stopped by Su Yi bluntly. "You can tell it at a glance, and you don't need to ask. Who can compare to the superb swordsmanship? Get over Gu Ming." Jiang Nanfeng. "Well, it's not good for something to be too good." His little puppet was indeed given to him by Gu Ming. It was Gu Ming who carved out a small Q version of Jiang Nanfeng meticulously with one knife at a time. He couldn't put it down very much. Although everyone knew about him and Gu Ming, he usually half rejected everyone's jokes with a playful smile. But Jiang Nanfeng had never been in a relationship in Gu Ming, so he was ashamed to admit that he was a big man holding gifts from his boyfriend all day long. Just when he was in a trance, he threw a card at random. Must. Chen Wei shouted loudly and was called back to his senses by Jiang Nanfeng. Jiang Nanfeng cursed secretly, looked at Chen Wei, gritted his teeth and said, "What do you want? Tell me." These guys don't like to hunt for supplies, so it's useless to them. If you want to play, you can play exciting, so they've been doing truth or dare. Chen Wei pointed at Guing dance belly dance next to him. Ha ha ha, the living room burst into laughter. Wei Ran bent down laughing and fell into the arms of Mu Ziking, who had just come out of the kitchen. Mu Ziking Changni held a cup of kiwi fruit in one hand and stroked her back with the other hand and said softly, "Okay, okay." I couldn't breathe from laughing. It really didn't concern Wei Ran and the others, but Jiang Nanfeng's desert belly dance was so impressive that he couldn't stop laughing every time he thought about it. Jiang Nanfeng blushed slightly, stood up abruptly, gritted his teeth, and said fiercely, "I am willing to gamble." Then he tied up the hem of his clothes, revealing his white and firm abdominal muscles, and walked over to Gu Ming, a tragic appearance of going to die for righteousness. Twisting her waist, sticking her buttocks, she tried her best to put on a belly dance posture, but she was still unable to do so. Chen Wei saw something was wrong, looked at Jiang Yanfeng suspiciously and said, "This seems to be better than the one in the desert. You probably practiced in private, right?" The living room fell silent. Not to mention Wei Ran and the others, even Mu Ziking was interested in gossip about Jiang Nanfeng. Jiang Nanfeng was expressionless and suddenly called out a skate. Chen Wei saw the big skate, got up and ran away, but Jiang Nanfeng chased after him with the skate and shouted fiercely, "Chen Wei, your uncle, I will kill you." "You, Mew." Wei Ran and the others turned to nibbling melon seeds and ran outside the door to watch the two of them blazing with swords outside. No one noticed that Gu Ming's ears were turning red at this moment, who had always been moody. Chapter 138. Have you ever met someone who touches porcelain? Brother, come here. Wei Ran waved to Mu Ziking, who was behind him. Mu Ziking was inspecting the base today, and he also casually took Wei Ran for a stroll, because the best place to inspect is the market where there are mixed fish and dragons. Because Xiaobai has now become a mascot-like existence in the southern border, attracting attention wherever he goes. And it is no longer as afraid of it as before, so whenever it steps out of Yehi Island, there will always be a bunch of people behind it. And Mu Ziking, who wanted to keep a low profile during the inspection, didn't want to be recognized by others, so Xiaobai could only be grabbed by Wu Wu, who was left pitifully in Yehi Island and had a temper. Mu Ziking was wearing black casual clothes, with his trouser pockets in his long legs, and he was walking steadily, but Wei Ran thought he was walking slowly, so he turned around and ran back to him, grabbing his strong arms and pulling him forward. "Hurry up, it's so lively." Over there, although Mu Ziking's face was still indifferent, there was tenderness in his eyes, and there was a slight tenderness in his mouth. "Okay, listen to my little ancestor, let's go, hurry up." The market was bigger than before. Because Mu Ziking made a plan to divide the pedestrian street with street stalls and slightly higher-end shops, he clearly classified the demand, supply and demand, and planned the market as a business district. The last time Wei Ran came to sell green vegetables, the market was tidy but still chaotic, far from what it is now. There are people coming and going in the market, shouting constantly. Standing here has an illusion, as if you are in a prosperous and crowded downtown in the past. Wei Ran was also a little dumbfounded. This place has changed a lot. Now it is like the pedestrian street before, and the rows of shops not far away are like a small shopping mall, and there are many people there. Mu Ziking looked indifferently at the crowds around here who were purchasing the items he needed, and said after sorting, it can be diverted and driven, and it can also be seen at a glance. It can make clear statistics and make quick adjustments later. Wei Ran hugged his arm. He raised his small face and smiled and flattered him. Brother is awesome. Why is brother so powerful? How can I be so blessed to have such a powerful person love me? The sweet words in this little witty mouth can always to make Mu Zikang happy. He pursed his lips and smiled, pointed at her forehead with his slender and clean index finger and nudged it slightly. You are the only one who can talk, and it makes me so happy to say it a few times a day. Giggle. Okay. Wei Ran's laughter kept pulling him towards the market. While she was talking about what he liked to hear, a small situation suddenly occurred in the well-organized market. When Wei Ran passed by a stall, a pottery fell off by itself, and the stall owner refused to let Wei Ran go, insisting that she had touched it while passing by. It happened that Chen Wei came to the market to report to Mu Zikang, because the market was noisy, so he walked away from Chen Wei. So when the stall owner saw that Wei Ran was a young girl, his attitude was even more arrogant. I said, you are a young girl, you just want to run away after knocking someone else's things. Wei Ran was stunned for a moment. She pointed to herself, then to the debris in the ground. You said I dropped this. The stall owner glared furiously. It's not someone else, it just fell off when you passed by. Wei Ran laughed angrily, and pointed her finger back and forth to be nearly 2 meters away from his booth. Distance, uncle, did you see? How did I hit your things at this distance then? Who knows what power you used? Maybe you just like this hobby. Wei Ran. Well, she understood that this uncle wanted to blackmail him, and she was unlucky to meet him. It's boring at all, so just relieve the boredom. She immediately said pitifully, I didn't know I met it myself then. What do you think? The stall owner saw that it was right, and said, I am an antique and a family heirloom. I was given it by others outside before. I don't want to sell any supplies I have. I was only willing to sell them after I entered the southern border, and you just smashed them into pieces. Wei Ran pretended to be shocked. The uncle thought he had bluffed Wei Ran, so he pretended to be daring and said, I think it's not easy for you to be a little girl, so let's just pay me 2 bags of rice. 2 bags of rice? She laughed inwardly. Don't say that the broken pottery was originally a fake. Even if it is genuine, it is worthless in today's world. Wei Ran frowned after listening to the uncle's words, as if she was about to cry. 2 bags of rice. Uncle, can you discuss it again? I don't have that much rice. At this time, more and more people came up from around watch the fun. Everyone knows that the so-called porcelain is worthless as far as it is concerned, and they are all whispering, that thing can't be worth 2 bags of rice. Oh, it's just cheating young and ignorant people. Some people seem to want to expose his tricks. Couldn't it be for this purpose? Afraid that it would be difficult to deal with it any longer, he took a step back. Well, I see you are so pitiful, I just need a bag of rice. Originally he thought that this bag of rice would also be hung up, but he didn't expect Wei Ran to nod in agreement. The uncle became excited, but when he saw Wei Ran put his hand into a backpack, he suddenly wondered that the backpack looked very deflated, and it didn't look like a bag of rice. Until Wei Ran actually took out a bag of rice from the bag. The excited stall owner's uncle turned pale instantly. You're kidding me. The people around also roared with laughter. Because the bag of rice that Wei Ran held in his hand was indeed a bag of rice, but it was packed in a transparent bag that was no bigger than a palm. This is the rice grown in the secret realm at that time. She deliberately packed a few small bags to find some time to do research and see if it would be different from ordinary rice. Wei Ran blinked innocently and looked around at the rice in her hand. No, isn't this rice? That's how our house packs rice, 1 bag per meal. Everyone laughed even louder. The stall owner became angry and wanted to do something. Wei Ran took a few steps back quickly, and quickly kicked the stall owner's chest hard with her long legs. The momentum pushed him back a few meters, and she didn't stop until she reached a wall pillar. She didn't look pitiful at this moment, her face was full of coldness. I gave it to you, you didn't want it yourself. Uncle Pengqi clutched his painful chest, feeling that his face sweeping lost his mind, and used his metal control technique to control the metal weapons of other stalls to attack Wei Ran regardless of his level. Wei Ran made a gesture calmly. The metal that was aimed at her was intercepted halfway, and then all fell to the ground. This is the operation she is most familiar with, the unsealing technique. Remove all control techniques. Uncle Pengxi's eyes twitched, and he backed away again and again. At this time, his sharp eyes saw a patrol team running in the distance. His eyes flashed, and he lay on the ground and rolled over, shouting, "It hurts me to death. Ouch. I'm going to kill someone." Chapter 139. Madam-to-be? The patrol team rushed to the middle of Wei Ran and Uncle Pengxi and asked, "What's going on?" The uncle, who was lying on the ground and rolling around, pointed at Wei Ran and shouted, "That's the woman, that's her. She broke my things and even injured me." The leader of the patrol team frowned and looked at the thick-armed man on the ground, then looked at Wei Ran, who had a delicate appearance, and asked Wei Ran with disbelief on his face, "You did this?" Wei Ran, of course Ran didn't deny it. "Yes, I kicked him when." She admitted. Uncle Pengxi immediately shouted loudly, Look, she admits to doing it herself. Take her away and put her in confinement." Confinement is the punishment method in the southern border. For example, it was detained by the police station in the past. No matter how serious the circumstances are, there is no prison sentence. It is just thrown out of the base and never re-entered. The leader of the patrol team took a step towards Wei Ran with the idea of calming down the matter, making the big and small things small, and took a step towards Wei Ran. "Since you have admitted that you did it, and broke other people's things, you should be compensated." Wei Ran, the corner of the mouth was slightly cold. "I mean that I hit him with my hands, but I didn't say that I knocked over his things. Why didn't you check it out and deal with it directly?" At this time, the people around also echoed, "That's right, it's too sloppy." "Oh, I don't have the heart to check for you." "Isn't it the..." Patrol team also felt that they were a bit arbitrary at this time, but they couldn't get up and down, and their tone slightly uncomfortable. He said, "It's not something you broke other people's things. There are so many people coming and going on this street. Why do they just hold you back and ask for compensation?" Wei Ran thought about it for a while before thinking about it. "Make a sentence. Maybe ... he thinks I'm young and beautiful and bullying." The people around laughed again. Only this time it was friendly. Didn't the uncle on the ground just see Wei Ran as a bully? "She's talking nonsense." Of course the uncle had to refute, got up, grinned his teeth, and immediately walked towards the patrol leader, clutching his dull chest. He's not pretending this time, although Wei Ran looks weak, but years of training is not a joke. It is real strength. The leader of the team, "Look, she just came over like this and then touched my things, and finally we had a dispute. We had already reached a negotiation, but this little girl finally regretted it." He felt that he was just describing not enough image, and he simulated an incident by himself and even imitated Wei Ran. That funny scene made Wei Ran burst out laughing. "Uncle, don't walk like me. I don't know how to walk with my feet, and I don't squirm and cover my face in shame." The uncle stared at her. "Don't noisy, it's not time for you to speak. Be polite and go in line." Okay, Wei Ran nodded sensibly. "Take a step back." Then the uncle talked with the patrol team about the source and value of his so-called treasure, what age, who passed it down, and how it was preserved until today. It was an excitement to pull the patrol leader. Watching the uncle's passionate performance from the side, he was infected with Wei Ran. At this moment he touched his chin and sighed from the bottom of his heart. He should ask Su Yi to come and see. This is the birth of an actor. When Wei Ran was fascinated by listening, the surrounding counties also moved small benches and sat down one after another to listen. The uncle talked passionately about the dangerous moment, and all the people around him gasped in unison. Unanimously asked, "Then what, and then?" For a while it was a bit like storytelling. Until a deep voice suddenly sounded behind Wei Ran. "Does it sound good?" "Good." She came back to her senses after being slow, and realized that the familiar clear breath was lingering around her. When she turned around, she saw Mu Zikang with an indifferent face standing behind her, and Chen Wei followed beside her. She immediately smiled like a flower, and pointed at the uncle brother. "This man is a bit interesting." Mu Zikang glanced in the direction she pointed, then turned to her, and dropped a strand of hair on her chest. The soft hair was pulled back. "Have you waited for a long time? Are you tired?" Wei Ran shook her head with a starry smile on her eyes. Not tired, how long has it been as soon? As Wei Ran finished speaking, the patrol team over there hurriedly ran towards Wei Ran and stopped in front of her. They just greeted Chen Wei with a flattering smile. Chen Tezu, why did you think of coming to the market today? Chen Wei grinned. It's not me, it's Mr. Cheng. I'm just looking for Mr. Cheng. Shocked Cheng. Mr. Cheng is here too. What about Mr. Cheng? I asked people from QI to meet him. Whether it was before or now, Musicang rarely appeared in front of everyone, and almost all of them were represented by Chen Wei, so most people in the base did not recognize Musicang. Chen Wei didn't speak, but looked at Musicang beside him. After the leader of the patrol team complied, his face paled instantly. If the cold and handsome man in front of him is the leader of the southern border base, then isn't the woman holding his arm next to him the legendary wife-to-be? The team leader thought about it and blurted out, Mr. Chen. Hello, Massachusetts AM. This sudden madam made everyone startled. But it was very useful for Musicang, and even his face softened a little. Wei Ran pursed her lips to hide her smile, her eyes flashed slyly and she waved her hand. You, Mr. Cheng, haven't married me yet. I dare not agree to your claim. Hastily said, it's all the same, everyone in the whole base doesn't know that Mrs. Wei is the only one in the whole base. Wei Ran didn't respond. But what she thought in her heart was that the little team leader was really good. Originally, the small team leader would definitely be dismissed afterward, not because of his bad tone towards Wei Ran, but because as a patrol team, he should be the same as the existence of the police, but he showed up today without asking, investigating or correcting. Later, he was also warned and demerited. If there is another crime, he will not only be dismissed but will be directly reduced to the lowest position. If the little team leader knew that his blurted words saved him, he would have to burn incense for days. Although the uncle who is left on the sidelines is far away, it is definitely not a simple role when the team leader changes his attitude towards Wei Ran 180 from a young age. At this moment, Wei ran over there, pointed at herself, then at the porcelain shards on the ground, and at the metal scattered all over the floor. No, the best policy is to run away first. He just wanted to leave, but found that no matter how he walked, he couldn't. Only after I lowered my head did I realize that I was lifted up into the air by the back collar, and my legs couldn't touch the ground at all. Then he dragged back quickly, and stopped in an instant. He only heard a cold voice ringing in his ear. You said, your antique was knocked down by us. Chapter 140. With a sound, ow. Uncle Bang closed his eyes involuntarily and trembled because of the high-speed centrifugal force. At this time he finally landed on his heels, but suddenly a deep and cold voice came from behind him, which made him even more inexplicably horrified. He turned around slowly, and Wei Ran and the others came into view. This uncle is quite lively, and these few people recognized that Musicang must have some high authority by virtue of the attitude of the young team leader. Forced himself to calm down and look at Musicang. He smiled flatteringly. Oh yes, this little girl touched it, but I don't care about it now, forget it. I wanted to walk, but I found that my feet didn't know what to do, and I just stood there. Wei Ran said with a smile, Uncle, you want to leave before the matter is over, you can't do it but Uncle panicked, but his mouth was still firm. Hey, it's said that Nanjing is a good-hearted man who works for the people. I came in the day before yesterday and wanted to settle down, but now it seems that's not the case. What's the matter? I'm afraid now because you have a lot of people. I want to sneak away, can't I? Wei Ran smiled and said, No. Uncle, this is the end of the world, and I don't know if I can live until tomorrow, so there is no moral kidnapping for the sake of the people. And people in the southern region have always been self-reliant. Who doesn't want to be here at any time, come and go freely. The uncle is not calm now, struggling hard, but his legs are still motionless as if they are growing on the ground. He wanted to use the slapstick trick again, but just as he wanted to shout, he found that his mouth was tightly closed, and he could only say, you ooh 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 ooh. King took 2 steps forward, not really wanting to see him, so his slender fingers with clear bones shook casually, and the uncle turned around again. The cold voice came again behind him. The market in the southern border is monitored, and it will be clear when you call it. You should be compensated a lot, but if... King walked to his side and moved slightly closer to the uncle. If you're lying, then it's my turn to talk to you slowly. The uncle suddenly felt that the moist air around him dropped a few degrees and opened his eyes. The arcs in the big eyes reflected the indifferent and cold King, but also mixed with fear. Then Chen Wei asked the little team leader to take Uncle Pengqi down. Wei Ran asked suspiciously, when did the southern border have monitoring? King took off the backpack on her right shoulder and carried it. It has always been there, but it was temporarily unable to be repaired because of the damage. A while ago, Nan Feng took all the backpacks with him, repaired and set up video transmission. I said why Xiaoying has become idle recently, and she followed Su Yi. Before there was no monitoring, Yan Ying needed to spend a lot of energy to monitor the southern border. Now that there is monitoring, Yan Ying saw not a lot. But her plant control technique is still the front line for obtaining information. After all, no one can guarantee that there are no plants in their home. For example, although a small grass is small, its vitality is very tenacious, and no one can stop its growth. It has no leaves, but its root system has thousands of stems. Chen Wei said from the side, that's not it, that boy Su Yi has been going out to perform missions recently and he looks very happy. Wei Ran giggled and teased, even if you have no one to accompany you, I think you are quite high-spirited. Chen Wei, looking at the stall where King turned his head and didn't pay attention, he squinted at Wei Ran and said, girl. Wei Ran hid behind King and made a cute face. Yehi Island, midnight. The base has frequently received a piece of information from outside these days, saying that there is a mine in a remote place 2,000 kilometers away. Chen Wei reported the information to King because he was not sure whether the information was true or not, because if he wanted to confirm it immediately, King must come forward. After pondering for a while, King said, it's okay to go there, I'll be there at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. Chen Wei replied, okay, I'll arrange the manpower. Wait a minute, Chen Wei, let Yan Yang, Su Yi and Nan Feng stay here. Even if he came back and forth in the same day, he must stay here. Wei Ran entered the secret realm a few days ago and has not come out yet. The next day, King straightened the cuffs of his thin coat with long fingers, walked down the stairs calmly with his long legs, and walked to the middle of the living room on the first floor. Xiaobai originally slept lazily in the soft nest. Seeing that King came down, he immediately walked obediently beside King. It loves to act coquettishly and beg for kisses to Wei Ran, but it never dares to do anything wrong with King. King touched the love pinch that Wei Ran gave to Xiaobai, and then patted the fluffy snow fur on top of its head. Take care of her at home. I'm going out for a while. Xiaobai responded. Then, King took Guling and Chen Wei teleport thousands of miles away. At the same time, Wei Ran came out of the secret realm. This time I stayed in it for an unknowingly long time. She put the large jar of hot spring water in the utility room, and then took the old hot spring water back into the space. In fact, if the hot spring water is taken out of the secret realm, the effect will be halved, but even after halving, the effect is quite amazing, so she developed the habit of changing the hot spring water regularly. After Wei Ran put the rest of the things away, Xiaobai came over to her with a piece of paper in his mouth. She tore it off and looked at the simplicity and vigorousness on it. Go out, come back tonight. Going out. Wei Ran wrinkled her face into a little bun, squatted down and looked at Xiaobai again. Is it just you and me left today? Ho ho. Xiaobai shook his head and nodded. There's more than one. That's okay, they're not here, they must be busy. Let's eat something first. And then slowly think about where to go to play today. Okay. Xiaobai rolled on the ground to show his happiness. But when Wei Ran took Xiaobai to the kitchen, Xiaobai suddenly got up and wanted to run back, but Wei Ran grabbed Su Fu. Where are you going, Xiaobai? It's rare that Chen Wei isn't here today. Let me cook for you, okay? Ho ho no no. Oh no. No, not hungry anymore. Don't eat, don't eat. Xiaobai resisted and wanted to break free. But Wei Ran, who was deeply confident in his cooking skills, did not know that Xiaobai was screaming a monologue in his heart, thinking that Xiaobai was jumping for joy. Xiaobai also likes my cooking skills, don't you? Just wait, I'll cook right away. Let me tell you, Xiaobai, brother is very domineering. He never lets others eat what I cook. It's only for yourself. While he's not here today, I'll give you a meal. What to do, or make the steak from last time, and it's quick to make. Ho-hoo! Help. Hey! Xiaobai was afraid of Muzikang before, but at this moment he hoped that Muzikang would appear in the next second. After all, whose daughter-in-law will spoil her? But until Wei Ranjian was brought over, it didn't wait for Muzikang to appear. Just when it resigned itself to swallowing that perfectly looking steak in one gulp. Boom. There was a loud bang, and the echoes kept coming back. Serenity appeared on Wei Ran's face. Chapter 141. Xiaobai. Wei Ran felt that the explosion was unusual, so she ran out of the villa without shouting back. Xiaobai rushed out from behind in an instant. Wei Ran quickly stepped on a big rock next to her, turned over and jumped onto Xiaobai's strong back. After that, Xiaobai ran quickly, summoned his wings and flew towards the direction of the explosion. Gao Ding, send people to evacuate the residents around the gate, and ask the residents to stay at home and not to go out. Send 2 teams of guards to guard. Su Yi immediately came to the place where the explosion happened, the main area on the ground of the base. The gate, at this time he was standing on the observation deck. Okay, I'll send someone right now. Gao Ding turned around and went down to carry out the order. At this moment, Wei Ran descended from the sky and Xiaobai folded her snow-white wings and stood beside her. She walked up to Su Yi. Xiaobai flew me all the way, but I didn't see anything unusual outside. What happened? A missile was launched to the base just now, but it was detected by our protective radar. It exploded in the air before the safety interception. Su Yi paused, his handsome face was full of sternness, pointing to the distance and continued. Sakura has already explored the plants in the oasis 50 kilometers ahead, and there is a team of more than 2,000. The aliens are coming towards us. At their speed, it will take about 15 minutes to reach us, and the real number is temporarily unknown. Wei Ran frowned and looked around. Where is Nanfeng? Yan Ying looked, he replied to her. He went to confirm the weapons that Yu Mingbu controlled on the city wall before. Wei Ran nodded sternly. She took a step forward, stood on the observation deck and watched the calm wind and waves in the desert, and said slowly, although there are weapons in the southern border, if a large number of aliens come up at once, it is impossible to wipe them out all at once, but there will always be intruders, which is inevitable. The aliens have never liked to come here, and the ones who would attack on such a large scale can only be the alien team raised by Chang Shuxian. Jiang Nanfeng also walked up to the observation tower and continued Wei Ran's words. Yan Yang confirmed Wei Ran and Jiang Nanfeng's conjecture. That's right. The feedback from the plants is that most of the huge group of aliens coming towards us are aliens. This made Wei Ran and the others fall into silence even more. In Mu Zikang's absence, most of the county teams in the southern border were transferred to Shangguan Ling. Now the people left in the southern border have very little combat experience, and the newly formed guard team has only been recruited for less than a month. It's too bad for them. Footsteps came from behind Wei Ran and the others. Wei Ran turned around and looked back. There were less than 2,000 people standing under the watchtower. Su Yi pushed the laser gun in his hand to the back, pointed at the group of people below, and said, "This is the person we can use now. The level is above 100, and the rest below this level I will let. They are no longer needed for Gao Ding's arrangement." The alien itself is a difficult monster for ordinary supernatural beings, let alone the supernatural beings that are now mutated by supernatural beings are even more difficult to deal with. A low-level ability user going to the battle is equivalent to going to death. But this is far from enough. I notified General Shangwan right away, but General Shangwan is not at the camp. He brought people into the large alien lair yesterday and hasn't come out yet, but Zhao Li transferred 2,000 people, and they are returning by cargo plane. Su Yi said. Wei Ran and the others did not breathe a sigh of relief. It will take 6 hours for Shangwan Ling to return to the southern border base, which means that they must stay in the southern border until the backup arrives. What's more, Mu Zikang has been unable to contact him. The sound of footsteps approaching in the distance. Wei Ran was fully equipped and stood on the watchtower with her weapon in hand. Her broken hair was blown by the breeze. Her eyes were resolute, and she stood coldly. Looking at the yellow sand flying in front of him, he shouted, "Protect the southern territory." Standing next to her, Jiang Ninfeng and Su Yi Yining raised their hands holding laser guns and shouted together, "Protect the southern territory." Gao Ding and everyone below raised their weapons, shouting, "Protect the south. Protect the south." Although the newly recruited guards have not made great progress this month, there is a high degree of overlap in the team's spiritual viscosity. Wei Ran held the binoculars and looked at a large area of black aliens galloping in the distance. There were a few off-road vehicles driving at the front, and Chang Shuxian was supposed to be sitting there. She said coldly, "Here we come." Jiang Nanfeng also paid attention to the situation ahead, and then pressed the communication device to contact Lai Ningxia at the weapons laboratory. "Professor Li, wait for the laser strayer on the city wall first. Attack." Li Ningxia responded, "I received." Immediately, the lasers on the city wall were activated in advance. This weapon has relatively free mobility and can rotate 360 degrees. After starting, it can automatically detect the target and launch a laser attack. As for why it hasn't been launched yet, because the alien stopped suddenly 5 kilometers away. A small drone flew to the southern base. "Xiao Ran, if you go back with me, I can consider letting the people in the southern border base go. If you don't." Bang 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 bang. Light blue laser energy shoots precisely. The drone was smashed to pieces and fell to the ground. Wei Ran put down the laser gun, disgusted on his face. "I feel disgusted when I hear your voice." Chang Shuxian over there sat in the car and saw Wei Ran with 2 guns on the city wall, and sneered twice. "That's the energy. I'll never forget it." Then he waved his black-gloved hand. "Go, bring her back to me, regardless of life or death." The alien saw that the people in front were already screaming frantically, and upon Chang Shuxian's order, he rushed to the southern border with bloody mouth and sharp teeth. The laser scanners on the city wall of the southern border immediately fired automatically, and the group of aliens who rushed to the front were hit by the laser scanners first and turned into pools of black blood. Yan Ying looked at the one-sided battle 3 kilometers away and said doubtfully, "Chang Shuxian's rushing like this. What good is it for him? He has suffered heavy losses, and the aliens are also raised by him, right?" "No, this is premeditated." Wei Ran put down the binoculars. Her eyes were sharp. "The ones rushing up now are just testing the weapons we placed on the city wall. If I guessed correctly, the wave just now was just a group of ordinary aliens. This seems to have attacked a lot, but in fact, ordinary aliens have no loss to Chang Shuxian." Jiang Nanfeng snorted coldly. "This Chang Shuxian's brain is really good. Didn't he use a lot of egg liquid? Why hasn't he turned into a strange shape yet?" Wei Ran shook her head. She didn't know. But if Chang Shuxian can manipulate such a terrifying amount, the ability is already quite high. It should be injected frequently, and it should have mutated long ago. But why is it still conscious in human form? Wei Ran's thoughts were pulled back by Yan Yang's voice. Why did they retreat?